Hello, Charlie TCG here, and welcome back to my channel. As you know, Paradox Rift is one of my favourite formats we've had right now in such a long time. We had back-to-back regionals this past weekend, happening in Brisbane and Gdansk. So today we're going to break down the top 8 sort of metagame, kind of where I believe the format might kind of evolve, and how it really reflected on LAIC. So if we start with Brisbane regionals, we can see here end up Gardevoir winning, quite a few Charizard made it into it, and Snorlax stalled. Actually did very, very well. I quite like this. It's showing how creative and how different it is. We saw Miraidon and Iron Valiant in the finals at LAIC. We even saw here it became 9th and 10th place. So people are still playing it. People are respecting the deck. But I love how much creativity there is kind of going with it. And that can really be shown by if we look at the winning list for Gardevoir. This is a bit different to where we're seeing other sort of lists here, but it's really kind of like respecting Snorlax Stall. Snorlax Stall, or Stall in general, has been in every single top cut so far in the Paradox Rift format. And how do they counter it? Well, they play a Professor Churro scenario. This is helpful in just a little bit of turns, getting rid of that Manaphy or even that Radiant Greninja or Jirachi. It's kind of like removing that into your hand, but you've got to be careful because they can play an Erica and go straight back into it, and you don't play any power pad. So it is like a little bit of like a one-off sort of tech against it. But we are seeing that Screamtail is becoming a staple in Gardevoir. The amazing sort of attack, it can instantly KO anything on the bench, which is very, very strong as well. Chuck a Luxurious Cape on there, and all of a sudden, you're doing a ton of damage, which is really, really strong. What I love about Luxurious Cape, it doesn't give that access to Screamtail to be another really good attacker. It helps your Gardevoir, so you don't need to rely too much on reversal energy. You can instantly attach that into a Gardevoir, and all of a sudden, your Brainwave is doing a ton of damage, which is really, really strong. I think Avery is becoming a lot more of a staple in these Gardevoir lists. Avery just having that instant destructive capability against anything on the opponent's side. Because like I mentioned in lots of my looking ahead videos, a lot of people love to have a full bench, and all of these support Pokemon have meaning for it. Just look at, for example, Baxcalibur, Xianpao. We've got to have probably a couple Baxcaliburs, a couple Bibarels, maybe even a Manaphy, and something for a Jirachi if you really need that, and another attacking option. You chuck an Avery down, all of a sudden they're losing some resources. If you're behind in prizes, you can do counter catcher. All of a sudden they might have no Baxcaliburs out in play. So it's a very, very disruptive, very scary supporter card, what we're kind of seeing. One thing that's really interesting about this Gardevoir list is its energy count, 9 basic and 3 reversal. We're kind of used to seeing the 10 basic and 2 reversal, so this is a bit different to where we're expecting some energies, but this is really going full into the, if I get behind in prizes, I'm going to try and hopefully win. The 4 Iono, the 2 counter catcher, and the 3 reversal really is going into that combat mechanic. There's no Cresselia, so against the mirror match, you are a little bit unfavored, but you do have Jirachi to kind of help counter that sort of capability against it. I really like this Gardevoir. I love that everyone kind of went, oh, Gardevoir's dead because of Iron Hands. It's unplayable, and it's ended up doing incredibly well in every single tournament. So that's one good thing about Gardevoir is it can never die, and I absolutely love that. But it ended up beating a Japanese player playing Charizard. We saw this Charizard list is kind of really evolving into it. There's no real big path to peak decks. Miraidon is pretty good, but they are focusing a little bit more on the likes of Beach Corp to get a big turn 1 attack with Iron Hands. Giratina isn't as strong as it once was. These are the 2 decks that really abused path to peak. And Mew only plays like 1 to 3, depending on what version you're kind of playing of Mew. So Charizard Pidgeot just makes an instant classically very, very powerful archetype. I love the Minior people are respecting Snorlax Stall. So an instant tech where you can attach an energy, chuck it straight into the active spot, and pretty much get an instant one-hit KO is very, very strong. If Snorlax Stall tries to tech a bit by adding into likes of Dunsparce, that might not be too good because you can use escape ropes, you can use any sort of destructive capability to kind of like push out that Pokemon, get an easy KO that sort of way, and that's kind of can be a little bit more challenging. The rest of the deck here is a little bit different to where we're seeing some Charizard. Having the Defiance band, yes, is normal, but we've just seen the Vitality band just to do additional 10 more damage. So after a knockout, you could do that magic 220 damage instead of about 210. Again, we are playing the Avery list in here. I love the stadium choice as well. Collapse can really help you if there's a big damage or Pokemon in there. Artisan, try and get any of your basic Pokemon, and obviously Town Store because you play quite a few tool cards. There is that Rotom V, and the Rotom V is the only card which you can utilize for a Steel Stone. And once it's in play, it kind of can't really escape. But it's really good in the first few turns because Charizard might take a little bit of time to set up, but Rotom V is that instantly amazing partner. Yes, it's that first Steel Stone target, but also what's really powerful about it is its ability to draw into your 3 cards and your turn ends. This is very strong if you go first, go second, or even if you're first or second turn of the game. If you're not getting much set up, this Rotom can add basically 6 cards into the archetype. This isn't playing the Arvenville, it's more about the structure capability of backs of Iono, and that's one thing I love about this Charizard. All these Charizard lists which we'll talk about are different. It's showing how much it's evolving, and it's one thing I absolutely love about Charizard. If we look just at the third list as well, you can see how different it is. Using Chorus Experiment as the main supporter of choice, making sure that Cramorant is a decent attacking option. It's really good in the early game. You're most likely going to play 2 choruses quite early on as your draw factor of choice. So all of a sudden you've got Forecast and a Lost Zone. So Cramorant just makes an instant make sense in this one. Doing 210 helps you in your Lost Zone matchup, and also it's a really good attacking option as well. Force your opponent to take potentially 1 or 2 single prize Pokemon is very, very scary and really good because you can reutilize it with Artisan and Super Rod. So very, very scary combination. Bibarel for the Iono Roxanne proof, and just in general, Charizard is a very good sort of one to kind of like draw into some factor cards because it needs that sort of setup capability. What we've noticed is only Radiant Charizard and both lists are the main sort of other sort of attacker of choice. There's no Entei, no Delphox, nothing like that. It's really going all into the Charizard because it has such high HP. Normally decks can really deal with it. What I think is very interesting so far about looking at this metagame, they are all different, these archetypes are. There's no one way it's all the same. This could be said with the likes of this Mew list. Didn't really gain any sort of new cards, really, but that Professor Churro, like I mentioned, is a really good inclusion in this one. If you're scared of Snorlax Stool, having that Professor Churro with Power Pad, making sure you can pick up your Genesects quite often in the game. You are always going to be able to attack with every single thing in the game, but having that Elsa Sparkle is very, very strong. The Grabber as well, just kind of look at your opponent's hand and get rid of any Pokemon they might have in there. I quite like in this Mew. It's very different to see in the Fusion build, but the rest of this deck is very, very straightforward. We've seen the return of really having Lost City, Path to Peak as a main inclusion in Mew. I think Lost City is really, really good, especially in somebody matchup-wise, where potentially they could play like a Drapion and get rid of it instantly if Lost City is very strong. Not many decks are playing 2 Drapions anymore. But again, this is a deck which we should always respect. I think Mew is just that powerful. You need to always respect how good Mew may be. The rest of the deck is very, very straightforward, how we're seeing most of Mew decks. So I quite like to see Mew do well, and this was actually the best performing Mew. If we look at the rest of the top 8, we can see 2 Gardevoir and 2 Snorlax Stool. The Gardevoir lists are a little bit more different as well. This is the non-battle VIP pass Gardevoir. So yes, very, very different. Having the Zacian V and Cresselia coming back as attacking options, Lumineon as a decent sort of way to get any of his support up as well, and having Iono and focusing more on Avery, which is definitely something which is a more common build of how we're seeing the sort of Gardevoir list kind of evolve into it. Very, very different. I've seen, like, obviously, Kieran did very, very well in LAIC with the non-battle VIP path. Showing it can also still make sense, especially in a big regionals, is quite nice to see, but you are a bit of a slower approach. This list does play the power pad, so you can use your Professor Churros quite a few times, but we can see here, there is 4 targets for Snorlax Stool, which can be a bit tricky in certain situations. And I've gone back to the 10-2 energy count. And if we look at another sort of Gardevoir list as well, we can see here it is pretty much, I believe it is the exact same list. So that's quite interesting to see that both of these sort of lists here did in fact get into the top 8 sort of bracket, but obviously the strongest version was with Battle VIP parts, which end up actually winning the event. And let's look at the Snorlax Stool. I just want to double check if they are the same list. I think they are very similar. But we can see here that Snorlax Stool is just is a very, very aggressive archetype and done incredibly well. I think that's one thing I love about Snorlax Stool. It's just how strong it kind of has become right now in the metagame. It was went to be memes of archetypes, and now it's been a top tier contender. It got 2 top 8s here. It got a top 8 in LAIC and obviously 1 Gdansk regional. What I love about this is a Pidgeot V makes you instantly never sort of deck out. So you can always just wait until your opponent really utilizes all of their resources. Temple of Sinnoh, like I mentioned in quite a few videos, it's really strong because obviously it shuts off Jet Energy, but also it makes sure you can still use your Rotom V and Pidgeot V sort of abilities. This is why one of the things which I absolutely love about the archetype. Having the Silene as well, and obviously the Power Pad, make sure you can never really deck out and utilize all of your resources as much as possible. The rest of it is just very, very straightforward. What I love about having the 4 copies of Counter Catcher, it means you can be disruptive, but also play as many of your supporters as you need. Penny, so okay, so like bring out something to like try and stall you out that way. You can just instantly pick up. You have such a huge sort of hand size always. Misfortune Sisters to deck out your opponent's archetype. And having that 1 Battle VIP pass, making sure if you hit the Yarvin, you can use the Battle VIP pass, get a couple of Snorlaxes, and hopefully lock out your opponent that way. And obviously, Grookmominal B is that very good sort of end game. Try and deck out your opponent, that sort of strategy. I love this archetype. I think the Luxurious Cape and Bravery Charm is making your Snorlax have either 200 HP or 250. It's just super, super powerful. I love how Snorlax is becoming a main meta archetype, just how different their kind of approach for the archetype. It's just very, very strong. I think this is definitely something to really, really respect, especially after results in Gdansk. So if we look at the rest of sort of the metagame here, the rest of the top 16, we can see here there was a couple of Rhydon, even a Giratina got in there, but we did see a couple of the Iron Valiant lists. Iron Valiant and with Entei, it's definitely become a bit more of a hype show archetype. I hope you picked up your Enteis, but I believe the price is already dropping a little bit as it did perform pretty well overall in the tournament, but it only really got top 16 and didn't push into that top 8, but still a very big pressure sort of archetype. I love that this has become a meta sort of deck here. Entei's finally had its time to shine. Suicune obviously did incredibly well in the early sort of post-COVID events. Raikou became a staple in Lost Boxes and Miraidon archetypes. And now Entei V had its little time to shine in Charizard, but now it's here as a main stage archetype. I love the Devolution TM in these sort of decks, pretty much making sure that you can like pretty much utilize the attack, have that potentially take multiple sort of KOs with your Iron Valiant, pings around everywhere, Devolution TM, take a couple prizes that way. It's very, very strong. This is definitely an archetype to really watch out for. It's very, very strong capability with every sort of thing about it. It's one thing I absolutely love about the deck. And the rest of it as well, we can see here, this Miraidon list here is a little bit different. It really focuses more on the Pioneer. If you know about it in top 16 in LAIC, there was a Miraidon list with 18 basic energies. Try always get that turn 1 hands if you're going second. The Pioneer does make a bit of sense. Discard your hand and search your deck for 2 cards. This can make sure you can get your double generator or switching card or the energy or flapping. It is very, very strong in the Miraidon archetype. Especially if you have your Mew EX in play, you can use it, Pioneer, discard your hand, search your deck for 2 cards, utilize the effects, then use that Mew EX to kind of like draw and replenish your hand up to 3. It's very, very strong, very, very powerful. One thing I don't like about Miraidon and how it's focusing more on these basic energies, is it sometimes may not get the right setup you might need to acquire. We're seeing here Mew is opting to play, sorry, not Mew, Miraidon is opting to play Battle VIP Pass instead of Nest Ball because it helps you try and get out your Squawkabilly. Because always thinking about Miraidon is you're always going to get any of your Pokemon set up. If you get one Miraidon, you can get all your electric Pokemon, but you don't get your Squawkabilly or Mew. That's why the Miraidon lists are opting to play the Battle VIP Pass purely for that sort of case. And like I mentioned before, Miraidon is opting to play Beach Court instead of Path to Peak because it's really opting on that turn 1 attack, be that aggressive sort of setter and try and win the prize race that way. So now we're going to jump into Gdunk's regionals, where obviously we can see here that Snorlax still ended up winning the event, and it is a little bit different to the other lists we've talked about. One thing I found very interesting, it played against not 1, not 2, but 3 Charizard decks all the way up from top 8, top 4, and then to finals. One of those easiest matchups for Snorlax still, which made it a little bit difficult in a way for it to definitely not win because it had such an easy way to the path to victory. It did play the Spiritomb because it was in Europe and we love Mew VMAX, so having that Spiritomb to really slow down your Mews around there is just very, very strong. The rest of the archetype is a bit more similar to where we're seeing other sort of decks as well. Opting to play obviously that 1 Battle VIP Pass, but still Arven is the most common sort of card of choice to go with Snorlax still. What I love is we're finally seeing Control do really well. The one thing I don't like about it is a lot of people are saying that Snorlax should be banned. It's not fun to play against. The thing is, though, we're in a healthy format where there are so many new archetypes. There's a lot of 50-50. There's a lot of like really bad matchups, and having a Control actually be as best as it can do is something we should be proud about. It's a meta game which you can at least predict at times, but also it's so wide and so diverse. That's why I love that there's no clear BDIF. That's why every single deck that's won have been so different and so unique. So yeah, I'm very, very happy to see Control do incredibly well. Do I wish to play against it? Absolutely not. But I really like that they actually have a place to stay. There's less Misfortune Sisters in this archetype than what we saw in the top 8 list that happened over in Brisbane. But we can see here the rest of it is very, very similar. The same strategy as well. The Crabominal for the end game sort of attacking option. The boss's orders, the counter catch really blocks something in the absence, but for multiple turns. And having one less luxurious cape, making sure your opponent doesn't additionally take 4 prizes from knocking out 2 Snorlaxes. They can only take 2 prizes from knocking out 1 Snorlax. Very, very strong, very, very powerful archetype. And again, having that Rotom is really good, especially in Control, but it's getting an additional drawing factor of getting 3 extra cards at the end of your turn. And obviously, it ended up beating another Charizard Pidgeot list. This list, again, is very different to how we're seeing most of the Charizards. But if we see here, there is only 1 out to the likes of the Blocks Nice. Can you guess what it is? Yes, only 1 copy of Escape Rope. That obviously kind of became a little bit of a tricky thing when that Manaphy was trapped in the active spot. They played Pidgeot and Lumineon V as your other sort of V Pokemon of choice to really utilize and for ourselves. So Pidgeot V is very strong, especially I really like in Charizard. You can kind of utilize it, get your Forest Hill Stone, utilize the end store card you want to have, and then shuffle it back into the deck. Another weight you can never deck out, which is very, very strong. And Luminion, because you're playing multiple supporter cards, it focuses more on the Arven sort of build on the deck. So that's one thing that's quite nice away, trying to get that Arven, especially if you're going second, get your Battlefield P pass, get any of your tool cards you might potentially need, like the Forest Hill Stone, to get another sort of card for your setup is really, really strong. And even having a Lost City as well. I love the Lost City in this sort of deck as well, making sure you can get rid of some very nasty sort of threats around the board, and really making your opponent really search for anything they might need to really try and like get a game winning sort of strategy. I love the sort of archetype. Again, I really like the Vitality Band in my Charizard list, so having the Defiance Band is still very, very strong, but only it really is strong if you're behind in prizes. Now, if we look at the top 4, we can see another Charizard list, but we're going to talk about Luke Kirkham's Palkia list. Yes, Palkia ended up doing very, very well by getting into 3rd place at Gedunk's Regionals. I absolutely love this list, and it is so powerful and so strong. It only really gained Earthen Vessel as a new card, but it just shows that Palkia is just very, very powerful. People may have respected like, oh, we're going to play out some Miraidon, so maybe I shouldn't be playing Palkia. But having that Ice Rider as a really good secondary attacking option, doing basically, I believe it's 240 damage. It's just very, very powerful sort of damage. I want to see if we can zoom in. Yeah, doing an additional 250 is super, super powerful. Pretty much came in every single basic V or EX Pokemon, and really good for that damaging their additional V stars and high EX Pokemon. Suicune as well, it's a very good sort of attacking option as well, that fleet-footed for additional card, and doing 220 if both of you have a full bench. And that Xianpao EX is a really good secondary attacking option in the late game to get that big instant one-hit KO. What I love is also Mew EX is made of really good inclusion in Palkia. Obviously, you can add that the Subspace Swell and that Star Portal, add into that Mew EX to really help fuel the attacking option, and it's a really good another attacking option. If you go against a Frenzy Gouging, obviously you do instantly KO yourself. But if you go against some other very strong archetype like Giratina, you can instantly one-hit KO them back with no repercussions. So I absolutely love Mew EX's inclusion. Earthen Vessel definitely opens up the deck, basically adding Capacious Bucket returning. Even with a Xianpao plus an Earthen Vessel, that's 4 energies that all of a sudden you've got to have in your hand. It's just super, super strong. And of course, Melanie adds a really good draw factor in your deck. There are so many switching cards in this deck because that's exactly how Palkia works. It's a really good sort of matchup going into Block Lax, which is one thing I absolutely love about the deck. The Collapse Stadium is your stadium kind of choice. Yes, it could be being redundant. It reduces your damage output, but it gets rid of these very highly damaged sort of Pokemon. So I really like this deck. There's limited sort of amount of energies required for the attacking option. And yeah, I'm really glad to see Palkia do very, very well. And of course, we saw Robin Schultz make a really good return with his version of Charizard Pidgeot. Again, like I've mentioned, Pidgeot is the most way to play because we haven't seen Path to Peak doing incredibly well. Block Lax focuses more on the likes of Temple of Sinnoh and Path to Peak. So obviously, Pidgeot is just such a good more inclusion. Why? Best thing I saw at the inclusion. Why draw tier 5? Then instead, I can choose any card I want from my deck. Here they are playing the Vitality Band, so I'm very, very happy to see that. I love the Vitality Band. Just that additional 10 more damage. It's pretty much always where Charizard is missing. You always like that, oh, I'm 10 off that Xianpao, or oh, I'm 10 off that Palkia. So doing that on Vitality Band, doing the additional 10 is just super, super powerful. Again, that option to play the Rotom V, like I mentioned, just drawing TF3 cards is just super, super powerful. And having the Arven build is still the strongest way to play Charizard, I want to say. Like I mentioned, if you go against Snorlax, there is literally nothing you can do against it. There is no way to retreat anything as well. You can't attack with your Minion, you can't attack with your Mew. So if you go against Snorlax, you basically very much an auto loss because you have absolutely no way to kind of like move any of your Pokemon as soon as they get into the active spot. But again, Charizard EX is just that strong right now. And we can see it's done incredible in both events. So Charizard is right here to stay as one of the strongest archetypes. Now, my deck that caused the most noise was Tawdle Redcliffe's really interesting, really unique take of the Lost Zone engine. Obviously, it played the Roy Moon and Iron Hands and Kyogre, which is where we've kind of seen some Lost Box or decks go with. They start kind of overtaking the likes of Dragonite and Raikou because, well, you could take additional prize cards, so it's really helpful with Iron Hands. And Frenzy Gouging gets an instant KO on anything. And obviously, Kyogre is super, super strong in the late game. But why is there a Palkia V and V-Star in the deck? Well, I generally have them watched a ton of the sort of videos there because I was quite busy when the tournament was happening. But honestly, Palkia is quite a good inclusion in this list. It could be quite good in the late game. You could kind of like surprise your opponent by adding this Palkia. But having them Star Portal as a really good V-Star card of choice, a power of choice, you can use that to power up any of your Pokemon. It can power up your Kyogre by utilizing like just attach onto it, so you're not relying on the Energy Recycler plus Mirage Gate sort of combo option. You can also power up your Iron Hands and even the likes of your and also Royal Moon very easily. You can use that subspace swell, put 3 energies attached to your Star Portal, attach 3 energies to your Iron Hands, then your energy attachment return that light energy. Also, you've got an amp you very much very early on in the game. I think it's a very strong strategy, and you can see there's quite a lot of energy cards. There's 12 energies in this Lost Zone sort of archetype, so there are quite a lot of ways to kind of like get into it. But getting the water energies in the discard pile, we do have Radiant Greninja and we have Pokestop, so it's the only real way to kind of like put them in a Lost Zone. And your only supporter of choice is the Chorus Experiment. You're not really relying too much on that gusting effect, as you can use Kyogre to do some bench sniping and amp you very much to clear up to this huge amount of damage in the late game. I love this deck. I think it's very unique way of how the Lost Zone is kind of like being portrayed. That's one thing I love about this tournament. There is so much creativity in the archetypes right now. That's one thing I absolutely adore about it. And we're finally see here Elliot's list of Charizard. It's very nice to see, because he obviously is from the Swansea sort of scene, which is where I started playing Pokemon. So it's so nice to see someone who I've grown up to really play this game the last couple of years. It's really nice to see this person do incredibly well by getting into that top 8 spot. They are playing the Arvenzaar with the Pidgeot, the Bibarel and the Evolution. So it's a bit of a slower sort of build of Charizard, but it just shows that it's just very powerful. I like the Bidoof splits because I think it's very strong. Like, you're not scared to Sableye. They're not getting additional 2 prizes from 2 Bidoofs, but also it helps in the likes of Iron Valiant, having that 7 HP one. Yes, it is 1 more extra retreat, but also it's very strong by taking 4 Tachyon bits instead of 3 is what the normal Bidoof is used to. I think this set is very strong. The Lost City, the Collapsed Stadium, another very strong supporter stadium card in the archetype, and even Vitality Band as well. As you know, it's very strong. But it did unfortunately beat the go against the Block-Lax in top 8, and only having 1 switching card with a Churro, so you do have multiple ways out to it. But again, with the Erica, it's very difficult and very sad to see that kind of tournament run go against a Block-Lax. But obviously, very huge achievement, huge well done to him. I absolutely love that Charizard. It's doing incredibly well. The rest of it as well, we do see 2 Mews. I believe this one is the Path to Peak build. The only list which actually focuses purely on running more Path to Peak. The Judge Path is obviously such a scary combination. We do play more ways into Block-Lax by having Power Pad, having Escape Rope and Churro, so multiple ways around Switch, and obviously Switch Car. So you're very much into a good sort of matchup into Block-Lax. So that's certainly something to be considerate about. But obviously it's Europe, so Mew did very well. And finishing off with the last sort of one as well, focusing again more on the having the grabber, but still Judge Pass and DT was the strongest build right now over in Gdunks. The rest of the metagame we can see here, we did see a few Miraidons, some Rapid Strikes, even more Stools, so Stool did incredibly well, and even some Iron Valiant. But Roaring Moon finally did actually do very well. This list here focuses purely on Roaring Moon as an attacking option. This one is focusing more on the very aggressive turbo build by having that 2 copies of Water Energies. And with the energy switches, so you can attack with your Radiant Greninja, and heck, even your Lumineon V to get out from any of his spots in play. I think this is a very interesting way of how we're playing Roaring Moon, but we're seeing that Roaring Moon's more success is coming from Lost Box sort of archetype. So seeing Roaring Moon, just straight Roaring Moon, the aggressive sort of build do incredibly well, it's quite nice and rewarding to see. We do have an okay matchup into Stool, purely because you can retreat and you can do a huge amount of damage into these Snorlaxes. So that's one thing to be considerate about. But yeah, very interesting sort of way how we're seeing Roaring Moon be approached. Is this the best way to play Roaring Moon? Should you go with a more slow approach by having a Bibarel and other secondary attacking options? Or is it Lost Box? I love how this archetype is so strong, so powerful. No one really knows how it's going to evolve. So I hope you've enjoyed this little breakdown of this sort of metagame, looking at the top 8 list and other ones as well. I also forgot to mention there was a Rapid Strike list from Rahul, which is pretty well overall. Again, just play a Professor Churro and that Devolution and TM, still relying on that Inteleon to do that quite a bit of damage of capability that way, not the Tachyon bits, which I generally think this Inteleon one is much stronger. It's another attacking option. You can use it to attack. You can do huge amount of damage that way. Urshifu is still very strong. But right now, I think Rapid Strike isn't as strong as it once was. But I just thought I briefly mention it, obviously. It did pretty well, and it's still going to be an archetype, which we should be considering about. So going into this, we do have regionals in a couple weeks' time. But like I mentioned, next week, will the metagame continue to change? Will Snorlax finally make another top 8 appearance? I love it as well. It's also in Europe, so be prepared for your Drapions and Espiritions, because Mew might come back as Avengers. Also, one thing I love about this, 4 people from the UK managed to get into that top 8 in Gdańsk. Very, very exciting, very, very happy to see. So I hope you guys enjoyed this little video, just breaking down sort of the meta game and how the meta is going to progress in the format. I think we are going to see more switching cards in there. Add your churros, add a power pad, add some more escape ropes and switch cards or switches, because Zorak still can be here and come back as Avengers. We could see a return more path to the peaks of archetypes if Charizard, Pidgeot both got second place at both regionals and multiple other sort of top 8 appearances. Could we potentially see the return of Miraidon, focusing more on the path to the peak instead of that turbo aggressive build, what we're used to seeing it right now to get the Iron Hands out as quick as possible? So, hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'll be back obviously next week with my looking ahead video. Really, really happy, and thank you so much for the support on the channel. It really does mean so much. So, hope you have a good rest of your day, and I will see you guys later. Bye for now.